A pleasant good afternoon to all our viewers on Globespan 24/7. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Sunday, May 19, 2019. As you know, we've moved from Saturdays to Sundays, so thank you for tuning in. And again, Globespan 24/7 is expanding, engaging, and embracing, educating our communities across the globe. Additionally, we are providing the dialogue, the debate, and the discussion on topics ranging from current affairs to community events, arts, culture, to sports. And today we have a special discussion that we're going to talk about, and that's breaking the cycle of domestic violence, a child's journey. I'm here with you. My name is Diane Madray. Thank you again for tuning in. We have with us Bibi Roberts, our clinical therapist, trauma therapist. We have also with us on Skype, coming in from Guyana, Nichola Munroe, who is who's been part of pageantry for quite some time. She also has a nursing background, and she's doing a couple of things. At this point in time, Nichola is 24 years old. She has a birthday coming up in June, so we're kind of like a few days apart from each other. So I'm kind of excited, celebrating that 25 for Nichola. And in the process of it, Nichola is going to talk about with us the journey of witnessing domestic violence. Today, as so many cases have come through, and as I posted earlier, many of you had messaged me regarding some of the cases that happened in Guyana with domestic violence, and it's very tragic. I mean, it's every day, nonstop. There are those who are cases that get reported. There are cases that we don't get to see through the media, so we don't know about those cases. So we're going to get to hear from Nichola, and we'll be able to look at this from a perspective of what through the journey Nichola has gone through, and how can we that are tuning in and join the conversation, because some of you might be children of domestic violence, growing up through that and your experience. We'd love to hear what are some of the things that you've done to triumphant through that journey. You'll get to hear from Nichola about that. And you never know, this is a future doctor you're looking at. So I'm really super excited to see that journey. So we're going to start through our office in New York, because I'm actually not there today. So we're all coming in via Skype. So thank you so much for understanding. And we're going to go to a 911 call, but we're only going to do 2 minutes, 30 seconds on it. And that's going to be the prerequisites going into the conversation with Nichola. So we're ready to roll that 911 call. Take a listen.
September 21st, 1991, time 22:13 hours. This will be a 911 call, Vision CT07.
Standing emergency. Standing emergency.
My mommy and daddy are having a fight.
Is he hitting her?
What? I'm talking to the police, Mommy! Stop it! Mommy! Mommy, don't take the baby! Don't take the baby! Stop it! Could you just send the police, please?
Okay, we're going to be there. We'll take your name.
No! Oh! Yeah!
Let me talk to you. Where's your mom?
What?
What's going on?
They're having a fight because
Okay, so we're just showing you a portion of that video. All right, thank you for tuning in back with us. We're just showing you a portion of that video. If you'd like to see the full version of the video uploaded by Utopian Dweller on YouTube, go to the YouTube after the program, and you can check Lisa's 911 phone call uncut version. I've actually listened to this tape, and it even today, it still gives me chills. What about you ladies? How did you feel listening to that 911?
I could see that girl. I could see that little girl. I could hear the fear in her voice.
Yeah.
My heart was beating a little faster.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, yes.
Nichola, how about you? How did you feel tuning in on that and hearing
I
that?
felt devastated. You know, it's traumatic because I've actually had the same experience with my mother. So it's scary. It's very
Okay.
scary.
So, Nichola, I want to thank you again for I appreciate you reaching out to me and agreeing to come on our program to tell your story. Because I think it's important as we talk about the women who have been murdered by domestic violence and the perpetrators who perform those acts, we need to talk about the children, the surviving children, because there are so many long term effects that happened to the children. And even that young lady with the video that I just shared, um, I actually pulled up some stuff from on her. And Lisa has gone through some very tragic experience growing up in her adult years. So we're going to go to Nichola. Nichola, let's talk about some of the conversations we had. Let's talk about, start with your mom and looking at that pattern of abuse that your mother went through from the beginning and the relationship.
So
So
correct.
from yeah,
So my mom, her name was Elizabeth Katrina Thompson. I know she died as a result of being abused for several years. She was molested at the age of 14. As a result of that, she ran away from home, got married at the age of 16, bared her first two children, and that was her first abusive relationship. She left, traveled to the Essequibo Coast, left her family back home, including the two children with their grandmother. Never returned until they were 10, I was told by my sister. After that, she entered into 5 common law relationships. Throughout those relationships, she's been abused. Her last common law relationship almost caused her death to the extent that she was basically hospitalized for a month, fell into a coma for 2 long weeks. Um, she played the victim. She felt as though she was responsible for the act the individual committed, and she felt sympathetic for him. And she bailed him out of the locked up the police station, and the abuse continued until it led her to her death. And she died during my CXC examination, to be exact.
Hi, Ms.Dianne, can you check your mic, please? We are not able to hear you.
my apologies. I had it on mute. Yes. So Nichola, in regards to sharing your story about your mom, let's talk about, with your mother going through the domestic violence and each relationship sort of resulted in domestic violence and a
Correct.
product of a child, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
how was that in terms of that journey? Because you are the youngest in your family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So
I'm the youngest.
let's talk about that and your experience being the silent witness. And Bibi, you can jump in on this too after Nichola, talking about children as the silent witness.
Throughout my childhood, I have been an introvert. I actually never did grow up with my mother. I grew up with my father's relative, so it was a blended family. My parents separated when I was 3. I'm the youngest child from my mother and the only child from my father. My mother made a son of 8 children, that is. Amongst all of her relationships, she's been traumatically abused. I've seen my father actually hit my mother and cut her on her cheek. She was hospitalized. and she had a mark on her cheek for years. Her last common law relationship, I saw her being thrown down the stairs, burst her head. I saw her being slapped around. I was told while I was 8 months old, my father took a knife and stabbed my mother in her abdomen. Thank God I'm still here today because I do have a great purpose. Both my mother and I survived the tragedy at that point. Um, it's also a trend in among my sister as well because they found themselves in abusive relationships as well, and they feel as though they can change these individuals. They feel ashamed. They feel ashamed to speak out about it in public, and I am proud to be here and be a voice. I have suffered trauma. I have been suicidal. But I later realized that I do have a purpose and I'm very strong minded. I've suffered depression. I've overcome those circumstances through dancing, listening to music, motivational speeches, and I became very outspoken and open. Like I said, I was an introvert and now I am an extrovert, and it really did help a lot. Um, Everyone tells me, they're like, "Oh, you're so strong," and I thought, I suppose I am, but I'm not strong alone. I have faith, and I do believe anything's possible, and that's why I keep pushing and I'm growing every day. So, yes.
Hi, Miss Diane, can you check your mic once more?
Sorry. Bibi, when we're looking at Nichola and her experience with the trauma in domestic violence, what are some of the things that we can probably say to some of the women that might be tuning in who have children? What are some of the things to look at in order to move from that relationship?
Well,
With the exposure of the trauma, because sometimes I think adults don't really look at this. I mean, you know.
first, I want to commend Nichola for taking this opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to speak out and share your story because your story is very common. And I must also share, I was a victim as a child of domestic violence until I left my home at 18 years old. My So I grew up in a domestic violence home until I was 18. One of the things that I hear a lot is the indirect witness of violence. And Nicole talked a lot about witnessing her mom being abused. And the indirect, as a child, you're going to feel unsafe. One of the things I hear a lot from adult clients is the first time I felt unsafe was when I saw my stepfather or my father smacked my mother. I felt helpless. Um, Children feel ignored. They have a lot of dreams. And we're talking about a 4-year-old, we're talking about a 5-year-old, we're talking about a 6-year-old. So there are the victims indirectly of watching the violence, of listening to mommy cry, trying to be there for their mom. So they're also becoming the parent for themselves. One of the things that I hear a lot in the community as well as from adults is, as a child, not being able to focus in school, getting into
Yeah.
fights at school, um, failing classes,
Hmm.
feeling ashamed, feeling embarrassed, feeling isolated. Homework is not being done because mom is really, her emotions are not there. The chaos in the house. So these are all that's happening to a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
They're constant. The instability in their household is constant. And then they develop sort of a way of coping. Their coping is they know what's going to happen when it's going to happen. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things they have. Some of the common things you may find a 16-year-old that's still wetting their bed
Yeah.
from the
True. I've heard
experience
that.
of, yes, from ex- just just seeing their mom being beaten. You may have self cutting. You may have a child that low self esteem. You may have a child that a teacher may look at the child and say, "Well, this child is can't do the math today." But the teacher doesn't know she can't focus today because of what's just happened in the morning at home.
Right.
So you have so children come and they're exhibiting many symptoms very differently. Nightmares, and they don't have anyone to go and say, "Hey, mom, I'm having a nightmare that dad killed you. I'm having a nightmare that dad is coming at you with a knife. I'm having a nightmare that you're not going to be there tomorrow." Um, a lot and depression symptoms starts to kick in. A lot of children get withdrawn. They have difficulty making friends in school. They may want to stay at school longer because they're afraid to go home. Sometimes they're afraid to go to school because if they leave their mom, they're afraid that she may not be there when they come home. So these are all very little things. They're there, but they're missed a lot of times by the teachers, by people that's there. Um, another for There's a lot of feeling of hopelessness. There's a lot. We listen to the 911 call, and you hear that child screaming, and that child in that moment, she's not only feeling unsafe for her mom, but for the baby that she's talking about. So they're not only concerned about themselves, they're concerned about what's going to happen to if they have a brother or sister. Another thing that I should say is feelings of being trapped in a house that every day it becomes normal to wake up and there's a verbal abuse. It's not only physical abuse, there is the verbal part of abuse that takes
Right.
place, that follows. There's a lot of academic problems and a lot of failures in school. Another thing that as the child continues to grow, um, they may run away. I remember growing up and I start running away when I was 13.
Mm.
So so that's one of, as we move into the adolescent, the teenage years, you will going to find
That's
that, yes,
And I've noticed, Bibi, thank you so much for sharing and being as open as you are and talking about your own personal experience. I really appreciate that for our viewers. And um, obviously, Nichola touched on her depression and suicide, which is part of that um, long-term effects of witnessing domestic violence. Nichola, let's come back to you for a moment. Talk about, you know, your mother went through domestic violence and breaking the cycle to domestic violence, how you looked at the patterns. We talked about your relationships. Can you share a little bit about that? The
So,
relationships you've been in?
as a result of witnessing domestic violence and as a result of being abused myself, I've had suffered from trust issues for years. My relationships, I've had 3 committed relationships, and they only lasted the longest 6 months because when I enter a relationship with someone, I try so hard to protect myself that I actually fail to see who that person really is. Um, I've been in one abusive relationship. I ran away from home. I was living home with boyfriend of mine at the time, my ex, and he was very abusive. I had some trust issues. We got into a lot of fights, and I realized that I was worth more. So I picked up and I left. I picked up the pieces and I did better with my life. Um, I felt as though I was betrayed in all of my relationships, and I decided that I'd simply work on myself because, I'm in charge of me, I'm in charge of my happiness, and no one is in charge of my happiness. And I am not a victim, I'm a survivor. So
Nichola,
I'm staying strong.
can you talk about, when we talk about domestic violence and we are looking at triggers, and you're a child that came from a domestic violence situation. You are in the process of breaking that cycle. So I commend you for all the efforts you've made. But if you had to tell
Thank you.
others out there, young people like yourself, because you mentioned to me that some of the triggers were such simple stuff. Can we talk about
Yes.
that? What are some of the simple things that sort of created a trigger for you in the relationships you've been in?
If I find out that the individual is dishonest,
Hmm.
as simple as I see the individual with another young lady, I jump to conclusion, probably they're dating the other young lady. Um, if they speak to me a bit too loud, I will start to rebel because I see that as violating my presence and uh, defeating my value. Um, if they cursed out at me, lied to me, sometimes I would have became violent as well to the extent that I would fist fight. Yes, so those are some of the triggers. Dishonesty,
Um,
the main
B-
trigger.
Bibi, saw this look on your face. Was there
I
something regarding
well,
the triggers? Yeah.
well, I one of the things about living in a home that's chaotic, and a home that has violence becomes chaotic over time because the violence becomes the norm, and children are not learned, they're not taught about emotions. What Nicole was mentioning is that how to regulate your emotions, because children are neglect. So they're not, it's not only experiencing and seeing the violence, they are neglect to the point where they're not taken care of. And so you find that children take care of themselves. They're learning how to regulate their emotions in all sorts of way. Nicole talk about can go from maybe 50, and correct me, Nicole, to 100. And in that, the trigger of, well, I'm not going to let you do this to me. I'm not going to let you do this to me. So the protection, the fight or flight in the brain, because trauma or violence changes the way the brain operates every day. The brain is looking for safety, and it's focusing, well, how do I feel safe? I have never really felt safe growing up. And when I see things, I may think, well, hey, this is not safety. And I may go to my very few responses. I may verbally even abuse that person. I may want to fight, or I may withdraw.
So
So
some of
the
it
yeah,
sometimes I think takes the pattern of what you've been accustomed to seeing.
well, children do learn
Mhm.
from the people they're around with. They're modeled
Right.
from that people. The brain is getting all the messages. So they're actually going to respond similarly. And that was one of the things, as children who are not treated in the sense of finding someone, that teacher that takes them under the wing to help them, someone, they go into young adulthood, they have a lot of fights, they may have a juvenile record, and we find a lot here in the US. They develop a lot of fears, and there's a lot of instability in their lives. I know that Nicola talked about choice of relationships, because they're making a lot of unsafe choices. It could be relationships, it could be via sexual partners. It could be many on a range, a scale of many things. So this kind of experience hopped from childhood, go into, and it grows into teenage years, and then we're going into young adulthood. And nobody really thinks, well, domestic violence or any kind of family violence is a prelude for depression, suicidal thoughts, self harming behaviors, anxiety, um, a lot of conduct disorder issues. And these are all things based on what that child was, the environment they were living in. And the famous case, I mean, everybody knows Bill Clinton, right? And Bill Clinton actually grew up in a domestic violence home. But the fortunate thing for him was he actually, the first 3 years of his life, he was taken care of in a loving home with his grandmother. So there are protective factors. There are people in our lives that help us out. Sometimes children go to the school because it makes them feel safe. They go to the church because it makes them feel safe. So they create their own safety zone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, Nichola, I know we're going to be closing out on time shortly, so I just wanted to do a quick wrap up. But see, when we have conversations like this, breaking the cycle of domestic violence, a child's journey, there's so much on this topic, and Bibi and Nichola will all agree on that. We can continue this conversation. We can sit here and talk for hours, and to see where this would go. But on June 9th, when we have our next segment, we're going to talk about why the men do what they do. So we're going to take a look at that. But Nichola, as we come to wrap up, can you talk to the women that might be tuning in, young women like yourself, right? Because you're just pretty much about a month away. I know it's noisy where you are, huh? You're about a month away from your 25th birthday, and I don't want to put a number on this, but I'm so proud of you for
Thank
the
you.
things you have been able to achieve. And if Bibi, myself, and some of our women in our sister circle can be there for you and be that mentor, we're going to do that to make sure you get to your destination of your goals. And you mentioned to me about becoming a doctor, so if that's what you'd like to do, I'd like to see how we can make that happen for you. So tell young women who might be tuning in, who might grow up in a domestic violence situation and think their life is hopeless, going through depression, attempting suicide, things like that. The journey that you have already gone through. Tell them what some of the things you would want to say to some of these young women and young men.
I would simply like to say, seeing that you're alive, you have a purpose, and we all need to work on fulfilling that purpose. Remember, you're not a victim, you're a survivor, and we can all overcome this. Have faith, keep positive, and always look on the brighter side.
And you also had mentioned, I remember you talked about choose your friends wisely.
Oh, yes.
So, right?
Yes. Keep your
So,
circle small and be very observant. Choose your friend wisely because not everyone is for you.
right.
Not everyone is for you.
And it's okay to spend time alone
Yes,
because
it is.
you've done some of that.
Yes.
So Bibi,
You're in charge of your happiness. No one else is in charge of your happiness but you.
Bibi,
Hi, Ms.
as we're
Dianne. Sorry
wrapping
to
up,
interrupt,
could
Ms.
you
Dianne.
give us?
We do
Yes?
have a live caller, Ms. Dianne Benskin, who would like to join the
Oh
conversation.
yes, yes. We have a call coming in from one of our guests that we've had on the show who's had experienced this. She will be on our next show on June 9th. Diana Benskin, you're on hold. Go ahead. I'm not hearing her.
1 second.
Is she there?
Hi, Ms. Dianne Benskin, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon, Diana.
afternoon.
Good
Thank you for coming
afternoon.
in.
You're welcome, Diane. Hello, Bibi. How are you doing?
Hi, very good. Good to
And
hear
that's
from
I
Nic-
you.
want to,
and that's
I
Nicola,
want
the
to
young
say,
lady I told you about
yeah, I
coming
want
in.
to say a special hello to you, Nicola. You are the mirror print of me a few pounds lighter. That's all I want to say, right? For now. Um, I have been through. Oh boy, I want to save it for my show when I'm on the show. But I recognize myself in you, and I want to tell you, Nicola, I became a motivational speaker because of what I've been through, and people are telling me. My boogie monster, I call my abuser, says I'm telling lies on them, but I don't pay them no mind. And I want to tell you, Nicola, that your past does not define you or deter you. It merely strengthens you. And
Yep.
I want you to say, dear past, I thank you for the lessons you taught me. Dear future, I am ready to embrace you. I want to say to the women all over the world, you are precious, you are valued, and you do not stay in a relationship where someone is abusing you, because it transcends down to your children, it
Yes.
transcends into your adult life. I had depression. I suffer from post traumatic stress disorder at age 60 as a result of what I've been through. But I had therapy. I had to open up. There's this taboo in our community where if you go to see a psychiatrist, you're crazy, but you're not. You need some help coping. And I applaud you, Nicola, for coming out. You're not an introvert. You were just
Yeah.
stifled by what happened to you. I want you to keep talking. And I'm going to bring you along sometimes with me where I'm going. I want you to talk, talk,
Yeah.
talk all the time
That's
because
terrific.
it
That's
has to
terrific.
stop.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Yes,
So
yes.
thank you,
Thank
Diana.
you.
And you're going to be
Yes.
joining me on the ninth, right?
Yeah, yes, I will be. I
Yeah.
will be.
All
Hi.
right.
Hi, everyone. Take care, okay?
All right.
Love you,
Thank you.
Nicola. Love you. Love you. You're beautiful.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll get to meet Diana sometime. She's also an author. She's written about her own journey. So
Hi,
yes,
Diane.
Bibi. So
Sorry, we
go,
also
you have
have some online comments that we would like to make as well.
yes.
Um,
Okay.
Could you go ahead? Okay. So we
Renrick
have some comments that will be read from our studio. Go ahead, Devin.
Renrick Ram Gobin says, "Why are there no men on this panel? Men are part of the problem and also need to
Yes,
be part of
yes,
the
yes,
solution."
yes,
Uh,
yes,
Chris Paraman says, "People in government need strict laws on
yes.
domestic violence." And Tracy Smith said, "That is very true. Choose your friends wisely."
Mhm.
Those are all for now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Devin. Appreciate that. And Bibi, any closing comments?
Well,
For,
I wanted to say children, going back to children in general, children have a better chance of surviving with early intervention. That means that this
absolutely.
is not going to be one person work. This is going to be a team, a community. The police officers, the firefighters, the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, everyone has to put the links together when they notice things, because people always say it's not my problem. They look at behavior, they don't think of what comes with it. What is it from? What's the symptom? So it's everybody's challenge. So children do better when they have a caring adult in their lives. So it's not that they're not going to survive this. Talking about what's happening, what has happened to you is so important.
Important. Absolutely.
Many victims and survivors today say, I waited so long that something happened. I was like an alarm clock, ticking and ticking and ticking, and I
Mhm.
just imploded. Talk about your
Yeah.
experience, because there's a
Yes.
lot of shame and there's a lot of blaming, and there's a fear that nobody understands me, or
Right.
nobody will listen
True.
to me, or nobody will get
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
But people get it, and you have to choose who you share,
Right. Yeah.
but they will
True.
get it.
True.
Yes.
And it's important. It's important. And correct, Bibi. The support is so critical in this journey. I think we all will agree. We all will agree. And with the silent victims, over the years doing work in Guyana and across the Caribbean, we've encountered so many children from domestic violence homes, domestic violence homicide homes. I've had the opportunity to bring some of these children here, and some, try to work with them in other areas. And it's a very difficult journey when you have to sort of be surrogate mom to some of these kids when, in that journey, them going through that and witnessing the domestic violence, struggling and having low self-esteem and some of those things. It's so critical, and we need to find ways where we can help those young children. So, Nicola, I think you had mentioned to me about doing something along with how we can help Guyana since you're there move forward. I'd love for you to join our campaign of Let the Women Speak and see as a young woman to see how we can combat that journey and reach out to a number of the young people there, especially our young boys. The person mentioned, how come we don't have men on this discussion? It's not that, we don't have men in that discussion. Devin, do you have that flyer from Humanitarian Mission? Can we put that flyer? See that online. This is and it's very critical. Suresh Grim is the person who is in charge of that. There's a program in Region 6, and he is very passionate about the work he does with women and providing employment, training, and stuff like that is being done through the Humanitarian Mission. So if there's anyone who might need some information in terms of getting out of an abusive relationship, but they don't know what to do, how to get finances and stuff like that, reach out to the Humanitarian Mission. The number is there. Suresh Sagrim he's been doing the work on the ground as long as I have, and we've actually worked together, and hopefully we'll see him in studio at some point, and we will get men into that conversation, trust me. So don't think that because we have this conversation with women today, we're forgetting about the men. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, let me just something that I wanted to share that I found online, and it talked about 5 things I wish I knew when I left. So it's looking back, Nicola, at your mother, if she was alive today, to think what 5 things that she would have known. And it talks about, number 1, it talks about leaving is the first step in recovering from an abusive relationship. And leaving is so hard. I usually tell people that leaving a relationship, it's like a drug addict in recovery. When an addict is in recovery, and those who work with addiction will understand this, the journey is long. It's an ongoing process, and someone is not just going to pick up and leave because you said so. It doesn't work that way. They have to find the right time to leave. So leaving is the first step in recovering. The second thing they talked about, and Bibi, you mentioned this, also Diana mentioned this, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's an ongoing process. People, struggle from post-traumatic stress. And Nicola, I'm not sure if you've experienced that, but based on what you've said, you may have experienced it in a manner with not realizing it, what are the symptoms and stuff. And we can talk to Bibi offline about that. Another thing we talked about that I mentioned, friends and family that you expect or need support from may not be capable of providing. How many times? I remember I read a post from a young lady about a day or so ago who said that, women who are abused, they don't get the help that they deserve. But when somebody gets killed, the media tends to quickly pick that up and focus on that for the moment. And then what happened with the women who are still going through the abuse. The 4th item on the list says, some will not want to hear or believe your story. How true is that? Right? Some will not want to hear or believe your story. So who do you tell? And Bibi, you mentioned that, talking to people. So, and choose who you talk. And Nicola, you said that, choose your friends wisely, The 5th thing it talks about is there's a potential for re-victimization from, unfortunately, lawyers, therapists, the court system that do not understand domestic violence. And how sad is that? Someone mentioned about changing laws. We need to amend. Guyana has laws. So it's not that the government don't have an avenue to combat domestic violence. They do. But it takes the public sector. It takes, our community activists or advocates to come together because this is not a fight that we do alone. You know, we have to be, you know, we have to come together collectively in that journey, in breaking the cycle. You know, eradicating, I'm not sure we can do that. And because of the recent cases we've had recently, in Guyana, the brutal murders of these women. I mean, it's, you know, sometimes I have to, some of you kind of try to prompt me from saying stuff, but sometimes I have to bite my tongue, you know, not because, you know, I don't want to speak up, because some of the things I would say, I can't say publicly. But it's really sad. And yes, you know, I would have wished if the death penalty was there, but unfortunately, you know, they say it's a human rights issue. But we have to find ways to provide programs to men and to young boys in schools. So Nichola, this might be something that we can, together with Diana Benskin, Bibi Roberts, and a few of us, we can figure out the journey, because these are not conversations that we're having here on this Let the Women Speak platform. We're trying to find solutions. And if you have a thought or idea that you would like to share with us, please inbox Globespan 24/7, and the messages would get to me. Or you can send me an email, or some thoughts that you may have, to Dianne, DIANNEM, at letthewomenspeak.com. So I look forward to seeing you all again as we come back right here on June 9th. And we're going to talk about why men do what they do. So that's going to be a really in-depth conversation. So the domestic violence conversation will continue. Thank you so much, Ms. Munroe, for joining us today and sharing so openly. I am so, so proud of you. And
Thank you.
I know Diana said that she will take you along, so I know things will happen. So we will take a look at that and see how we can tap into that, right? I will reach out to you as we get offline and see if we can have a conference call with Ms. Roberts. Bibi, thank you again. Are you still there?
One last thing, Diane.
Yes.
Trauma don't go away, and this is for anyone that has a child in their home that knows that child has been indirectly affected, whether directly or indirectly, by family violence. It will not go away. It's like an alarm clicking, and there are going to be many triggers, whether it happened as teenager or as an adult or as a mature adult, in whatever form. It's there. It's not going to just stay low until the end. So for anyone that has a child in their home that knows that child has been impacted, seek some kind of help for that child. Seek some kind of help.
Absolutely. And
it doesn't have to be in a therapist's office. It doesn't have to be. Therapist comes to your home. It don't have to be there. There are all sorts of people, all sorts of good resources out there today. Even in Guyana, when I was there, there wasn't anything much at all.
Yeah,
and Diane, you talk about the laws. The laws were there, but they were never implemented.
True.
And no one follow up on anything.
I think that's the key. Yes. That's the key, Bibi, is the follow up. You know, because we can talk the talk, but you know, the follow-up. And you know, Diana, I hear you echo in the back, so we can agree on that, you know, the follow-up from government, from organizations and stuff like that. And I know Suresh Sagrim, who is tuning in, would agree with me on that, because I know I get the calls all the time from him, you know, and we have in-depth conversations. So hopefully we'll find a way to see how we can bring more of these conversations, you know, across the globe, regarding what's happening and how we can combat domestic violence, and how we can begin to look at saving our children. Our children of Guyana and across the Caribbean are our future. And I hope that you will agree with me on that. So as we close off now, it's about 1:16.
Hi,
We're going to get ready.
Have a few more comments that we would just like to read from online.
Comments, okay. Yeah. All right, Devin, we have a few more comments that are coming in online, so let's hear them.
Renrick Ramgoban says, suitable role models are needed to compensate for failures in the home. The failure in one supporting mechanism should not be the end of the line. The church can do more, community support groups, etc. We need to strengthen and re-establish supporting mechanisms. He also said, when is this program coming to Plaisance, Better Hope, etc.? And we have another comment from Norma Jones that says some women don't speak out, they just take the blows silently. Just because of
True. True.
love does not mean that someone can hurt you. And those are all for now.
Thank you
And
so
Love.
much.
If,
one
if you're
more
walking on
thing.
eggshells, that's not
Yes.
love.
And you
That's
know
not love.
something, in a domestic violence home, it becomes the norm.
Yeah.
Everyone behavior is tailored to when they know that abuser is going to be home, and everybody is on edge
Hmm.
because there are little things also that triggers the violence. One other thing I wanted to share, there is a really good book out called No Visible Bruises, and it's by Rachel Sneeder. She did a lot of research over a 2 year period. And this book is so well written and it includes a men perspective also because she's not having a conversation. She wants to share solutions. So it's a really, really great book. Anyone wants to learn a little bit more about
Can you repeat
why.
that book? Can
Yes.
you repeat that book
It's
again, Bibi?
No Visible Bruises, and it's
Okay.
by Rachel Sneeder.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. So as we
Thank
close
you.
out, thank you both ladies. Thank you, Diana, for coming in. Thank you to our viewers for your wonderful comments. And again, reminder: the flyer will come up back on the recorded version of this video. So humanitarian mission by Suresh Sagrim is they are doing stuff in order to minimize the domestic violence happening in Berbice. They're offering services. So we need to have our women take advantage of these things. We can't just put them out there and no one takes advantage of them. So those of you who might know someone, please check the video or check the humanitarian Facebook page or Suresh Sagrim Facebook page or mine. I will add to my page and you can follow that. So as we close off now, we have the GCOM readiness with Sais Narayan Singh, Vishnu Durga, Sais Gunraj, and Dr. Fitzgerald Yah, professor at UG. So that's going to be coming on again at 2:30. So you guys can take a break, have some lunch or something, because I sure will. And again, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your Sunday, both of
Thank
you.
you. Thanks.
And
Thank you.
our viewers, please stay tuned and come back at 2:30 for the next program. Thank you again, and see you again on June 9th. Have a beautiful Sunday and the rest of the week. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.